Times the charm, everybody. Good morning. This is Amazing Authors with Meg Nocero. This is where we have an empty room. A story is and certainly waiting to happen. And I have the privilege of bringing author Wendy Sanford, these walls between us, author on. I'm going to wave at her and I'm going to invite her on as we speak. Go. And you know what? I love certain things because, there are days and there are days. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Wendy.
Hi.
Wonderful. I am just saying how wonderful it is when we can all, collaborate to start something new. And this is certainly your first Instagram Live.
Absolutely.
How exciting is that? So I welcome you to your first Instagram Live. Nothing better. It's all uphill. It's all downhill from here. You'll be fine.
And you're a great teacher too, because you just
I'd like to have you quote. I've got that recorded now so that I can actually share that with the people who love me most, who probably would challenge that because I have little patience, but I'm happy to always help where I can. So everybody, welcome. Amazing authors. Like I said, this is author Wendy Sanford. She is the author of These Walls Between Us with this beautiful cover. It is a memoir of friendship across race and class. How amazing is that? And I did have the pleasure of reading this book, and I get to share her journey, her story, because this particular episode, and all of my episodes when I'm talking about the authors, is about highlighting the author and their journey, this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful journey that they've taken to bring their story to light, because there's an important message there that they want to share, and they have an audience out there that is looking for that as well. So you get to be the lighthouse too in this particular realm, this niche, and I am so happy to have you today, Wendy. Welcome.
Thanks, Meg. I'm so delighted to be here and also to be interviewed by such a generous and thoughtful person.
Well, I appreciate the loving comments. Certainly, unconditional love is something I will welcome all the time. And while we're saying that, I want to introduce you. This is where the storyteller becomes the story. And you are the award-winning author now, many times over. I keep watching them pop up and I'm like, congratulations, congratulations. And I do want to read to you all her bio so you get a little bit of more of a beautiful background into Wendy, because she's very accomplished. She grew up in an upper middle class white suburban family in Princeton, New Jersey, and attended private school throughout her life. During the socially turbulent time of the 70s, she became a feminist, a lesbian, and a Quaker. A founding member of the Boston Women's Health Book Collective, Wendy co-authored and edited many versions of the women's health and sexuality classic, Our Bodies, Ourselves, from 1973 to 2011. And in seminary at Harvard Divinity School in the 1980s, she began to read works of women of color as devotional reading to remedy her previous exclusive exposure to white and mostly male authors. She served for nearly a decade in campus ministry in the Boston area, and in her 50s, she began to reckon with her own white skin, the benefits that came to her through being white. In 2003, she earned an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts. She lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with her wonderful partner, Polly Attwood, her spouse of 41 years. I think it's so amazing because we all find ourselves in certain circles and we all get to play in new, wonderful sandboxes, and just the acclaim and the genius and the expertise of so many people that I've met with She Writes Press, because we are both She Writes Press authors, is just astounding. I have to tell you, it's like, wow, if you are the company you keep, then I hold my head higher knowing people certainly like you and what you've done in your life and what you continue to do by spreading your message for all to hear. Wendy, did I miss anything that you want to add as to your bio is concerned?
No, you just left out my dog, that's all. My wonderful little dog.
Tell your dog I apologize, because I know how important animal guides are to all of us, as I have lived with them my whole life. So what is your dog's name?
Her name's Rory. She's right across the room asleep, as she usually is, but
Rory,
she's a good muse.
Absolutely. She's giving her really calm energy to you and me today. So I appreciate it, Rory, for sure. Like I said, congratulations on your recent awards. Not only were you honorably mentioned in the memoir category in the Eric Hoffman, but you have others as well. I'm happy to say I'm in your company in a couple of those.
Yes, you are.
So exciting.
Congratulations
so
to you.
So kudos to you. You know, I'm so honored, like I said, to have you here having this conversation. And I did want to give a bit of a summary as to your book, because I think it gives a little bit more insight. This is about you, the author. However, the author's story that you chose to tell in this particular, you know, rendition, because you have other books as well, you know, is kind of a wonderful look into, you know, seeing how we can all grow and change as we become wiser and more aware.
That's
I like
so
it.
true.
I like to say, you know, I was not conscious of that before, but when I am, it changes the game that I choose to act differently. And I think that that is certainly, to your point, what you've told in this book. And plus the wonderful friendship you have as well, the beautiful story of relationships, which I personally just find amazing. And we have Valerie Taylor here with us, joining us.
Hi,
Very
Valerie.
happy to have you, Valerie. So I'm going to give a little bit into a little brief intro into your book, and then I want to talk about you, because I really do believe the story is really all about you. Obviously, it's memoir, so that's clear, you know. But like I said, this is a book that took place in the mid-50s, beginning in the mid-50s, where a 15-year-old African-American teenager named Mary White, now Mary Norman, traveled north from Virginia to work for 12-year-old Wendy Sanford's family as a live-in domestic for their summer vacation by a remote New England beach. Over the years, Wendy's family came to depend on Mary's skilled service, and each summer Mary endured the extreme loneliness of their elite white beachside retreat in order to support her family. As the black quote-unquote help and the privileged white daughter, Mary and Wendy were not slated for friendship. But years later, each divorced, each a single parent, Mary now a rising officer in corrections, and Wendy a feminist health activist, they began to walk the beach together after dark, talking about their children, their work, and a friendship began to grow. I'm going to leave it there, because I think that's a great teaser as to your beginnings. And then really, I love this part where the story really truly begins. And I think that that's where the healing process comes to light. So, you know, why did you decide to write this book at this time? And I know it's probably not at this time. It came out this last year in October, but I'm sure you've been writing this thing for years.
For so long, Meg, for 30 years at least. So here's how it started. Mary Norman and I were walking the beach at night, because in that particular white enclave, she wasn't really welcome on the beach during the day except in service. So we would go out in the evening and just start walking the beach and talking about our lives. And we were both lonely. She was the only black person for miles around that we knew. And I was lonely because I was becoming a lesbian. I was a feminist. I came from a very conservative family where there was a lot of drinking. So my happiest moments were walking on the beach with Mary. And I think that was true for her too. And so we'd been doing it for a few years, talking about work, talking about our kids. And this was just like a couple of weeks every summer, but it was central to both our lives. And one evening out on the beach, Mary said, we should write a book together. No one would believe our friendship. And we had been reading a lot of works. It was the 80s, 70s and 80s were just a flowering of works by African-American writers, in particular novelists. And so we'd been reading a lot of stuff and talking about it. And I'd been working on our bodies ourselves and doing a lot of writing for that. So it just was a time when it felt like you could say to someone, let's write a book together. Yeah. And she did. And I said, yes. She said, it'll get us on Oprah, which was so fun. The way we know when that was Oprah had just started her show. So it was that long ago that Mary made this suggestion. And so I said yes, of course. And we spent the next 30 years trying to make it happen, because I thought I could just, as a person who was a writer, I thought I could just write our story. And it took so many years and so many lessons from Black Lives Matter and other important groups of color for me to understand I, as a white person, could not write Mary's story. Right. I couldn't write our story. I could write my part and my version of our story. So that's what I set out, that's what I've ended up doing. And I tried interviewing her, Mary. I gave her a tape recorder. I mean, she took a tape recorder home and was going to tape record herself. What I didn't understand at the time is, as a person who was working class and Black, she had jobs that didn't pay much. She had very high aspirations for her two sons, and she worked all the time. And we had these crazy moments when I remember saying to her, "You're a workaholic. You work too much. Why don't you give up one of these jobs?" And we now laugh at my ignorance.
Yeah.
And that's how the friendship went along for all those years. I was trying to write our book. I realized she'd let me know some piece of ignorance, or I'd read another writer and understand, oh my heavens, I never understood Mary. And so the book got better and better because I started listening to her more, and then texting came along. Believe it or not, the book took so long, the texting came along, and then finally Mary said, "Ask me anything you want. I'll text you the answer." And suddenly, finally, I had her words that hadn't come through my writing things down, but they were really her words. And so I went back through the book and put so much of her life into it. And I think we finally felt it was ready to come out. But partly we were too old. We were so old we couldn't do more to it anyway. It was time. It had to come out.
Well, I do believe sometimes we do get in the way of the story unfolding. Once we birth the baby, the book, out into the world, you just have to let it go and then see where it goes. That message, can always be perfected more, but why? At this point, why? When the actual gist of the story is embraced. And when I hear you saying that you were trying to understand Mary, but what a gift it was for you to also be vulnerable to Mary so that she understands you as well. Because I think that's really the two of you coming together and having those conversations, which I'm a huge fan of, because yes, her situation was not yours, but also your situation was not hers. So she may see you and kind of, I hate this, I will say this, and may put you into a group with people that she sees as that white group over there. And you may see that Black group over there. But you're Wendy, and she's Mary, with all the things that come with it. And the fact that you both took the time, and I love this, on the beach, right? Walking on the beach, having these heart-to-heart stories, and then the story starts to continue from that point, is really going to be quite beautiful for everyone else who's reading the book, because it's an offering. I believe it's an offering. So what is your take on that, as far as where, Mary is your friend? She's no longer, she doesn't work for you. She's your friend. This is pure friendship relationship, sisters even, I would point out.
Yeah, we use that word. So I think for people who are, there are a lot of white people will say, well, I want to have interracial friendship, I just don't know how to do it. I want a friendship across race or across race and class. And I would just say that I had so much to learn, and I did a whole lot of reading so that Mary didn't have to explain her life to me. Some of the realities of her life, I would learn them elsewhere and then be more informed as a friend.
Yeah.
And the thing about Mary knowing me, that's such an interesting point. In her work as a domestic worker, which she then moved on from primarily, but her job was to know everything about me and to know my preferences and my boyfriends and my this and my that, and then my girlfriend, And so, and I was trained that her life was not so important, that my life was primary. So we had to do this whole shift over all these years. I mean, we've been friends now for 65 years.
Wow.
And, well, we've known each other. We've been friends for maybe 40, but that's pretty long. and so
friendships don't last like that long in a lot of respects, certainly. And you don't live in the same place either.
We don't. And with the pandemic, we're just going to see her next in 2 weeks. Finally, first time since the pandemic came, we're going to drive to Virginia and we'll be together in person. But it's been a long, dry period. So I guess what I'm saying is that I had to learn a lot about her. Mary knew a lot about me because of the work. What had to develop was some trust that I was learning to be different from what I was trained to be as a white person, focusing on white, thinking I was superior, or whatever I was trained to do. It took a long time to build that trust. And I think at the end of the book, there's a chapter where she and I go to Eastern Virginia to find what we can about her birth father. And the fact that she let me do that, even though everyone there thought I was a social worker, the fact that she invited me to do that and we did that together is like, it's a blessing.
Yeah. What comes to mind, I think, most about your story, that wasn't surprising, because I see you. I don't know Mary, but I obviously see you, and I know what I know through the story is that there is this incredible, jump into this vulnerable place from the heart. And you can see that that was a progression. And I love the fact that you went to Harvard Divinity School. You're very well educated. You got your MFA. I mean, you're very driven to learn more. So back to your publishing journey, because you said it took 30 years to get here. From the time that you started to write to now, tell me a little bit about that. So, those out there who are looking to tell a very special story, don't ever give up, and they may have you as an example or a light.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I started trying to write it as fiction, and I was in a fiction class where people were trying to figure out who would play me and who would play my mother and who would, in the movie. So it was, I was okay at setting scenes, but the whole fiction thing just didn't work, because really this is a story about important changes for me and learnings for me. And I couldn't write it through somebody else. So then it became a memoir, and I had lots of teachers, and then one wonderful coach for 4 years, an African-American woman named A.J. Verdell, just brilliant person. And she would just tell me when I got things wrong in terms of my white world and not understanding Mary's world. And she would tell me. So that was a long period of making the book better. Then when I tried to find an agent, because she felt it was a really good book, and she thought it should have an agent and then a publisher. And to be honest, Meg, for a white woman to write a book about a Black woman who she first met as a domestic worker in her house is politically just suicide for for the agents. The couple of agents I spoke with said, I can't figure out how to sell this book. And
let me ask you, did they ever give you a reason why? Because I would think, and I will be honest with you, that, a lot of people in this world are out there, screaming and yelling, like, we want to be seen, we want to be heard. And no one, it's very interesting, because memoir specifically is telling the story through you, right? You are telling the story through you. You cannot change you. Someone told me long ago, to know me is to see me, right? And the same thing goes for you, your story, and who's involved with that. To know Mary is to see Mary, with everything that comes with that. So it's interesting that everyone's screaming, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, I want to feel special. And this story does that, right? Through a process of healing over time, because what you do is say, yes, we may be different, but we're not divided necessarily. There doesn't need to be divisions, so to speak, because we have a conversation to go. So my question for you is that, why did they say that? Why did they?
Well, I'd love you to ask them. I mean, I think it just felt like what I said. There's a growing political awareness of the ways that, for instance, authors of color get silenced, or people of color get silenced by white people. And if you think of a white person writing this story that purports to also give Mary's life, it just comes pretty close to being not a good thing. And I was working so hard in the book to make it a good thing and to make Mary's character come through really fully and with great respect, et cetera, et cetera. But the whole project I had set myself, I think publishers didn't, the few publishers I approached didn't want. And then then once Mary and I understood, look, she's 80, I'm 76, we got to get this out of here. Then I found out about She Writes Press, about hybrid publishing, and that gave me the opportunity, with huge support from people like you and all our wonderful cohort, to get the book out there that I felt was meant to be out there, to be of use, particularly to white people who need to think about how we can turn up better and show up better and more dependably in interracial friendship. So I just, yay, She Writes Press.
Well, I do love the fact that aligning to what you just said for myself, I didn't want anyone to change my story, because this is a story that is coming through me, that needs to be told, that needs to be championed, and needs to get out there. And I know
such a wonderful story.
Well, and the same thing, you know, with regard to you, this is a story that needed to be told through you. And now that it's out there, how are you feeling about this huge accomplishment?
So happy, you know, and one of the things I'm really happy about is that Mary Norman, you know, she had never been on Zoom before. We'd never even seen each other on Zoom in all these years of COVID. And then we realized, oh, we could see each other. We cried. But so she's more and more comfortable. And we're doing interviews together now.
Right.
And that's really fun. And my Quaker community, which is, you know, cares a whole lot about racial issues. It's mostly white community, but not entirely by any means. And they've been really interested in the book. And I got to talk to Quakers the other night via Zoom, and you know, that's been one of the exciting. So one exciting thing is Quakers receiving it. Yes. Another exciting thing is Mary sharing in the letting people know about the book.
Oh my
We're going to meet with a book club in Iowa at the end of this month, the two of us. And they've been studying the book actually, it's an anti-racist book club, and they've been studying the book for a few weeks, and we're just going to have a great time with them on Zoom. You know,
but that's the coolest thing. So your actual memoir is starting conversations in all sorts of communities that wouldn't have had that opportunity before. And I think that,
exactly.
You know, I heard it said long ago, and I think it was, God, if I remember I'll give credit to the quote in a second, but because I'll remember them. But when the story begins, when you read the last page, when your story is accentuated, when you read the last page of another person's book, and you actually start to contemplate those things that you may have never started to think about before, that's when the difference or the change starts to happen. And that is the beauty and power of storytelling, which you've done so very well. I want to ask you to share with us your favorite moments as you were creating this masterpiece.
Okay, I have a few. One is when Mary suggested it, and we started planning what we'd wear on TV. I mean, this is like 40 years ago, but it's like you know. And then she said, and it'll make us a lot of money, which of course we've all learned that memoir doesn't exactly, unless you're super famous.
I will stop you, Wendy.
But that isn't the point of this book, or of yours, is not really to make money. It's just to tell our truth, and particularly in a world that's in this country, there's a whole conservative movement to limit what teachers can teach about our real history.
I know.
To have contributed a piece of the real history, and it's all ugliness and all, is just so satisfying. So, but another great point in writing the book, was when texting came, and I realized finally Mary's voice could get into the book more. Yeah. And then a couple of books you know, it's like Toni Morrison's work on on white authors and how we tend to create choked representations of Black characters. That was incredibly important to me. It was like a light bulb going off in my head there. Ta-Nehisi Coates writing about reparations, and it helped me understand Mary's situation with housing and house ownership in a whole other way. And so those were really exciting moments. And then when her sons read the book, she has 2 adult sons, and she was wondering, actually, could she let the book go out there? And I wasn't going to publish it unless she said yes. And it was very revealing of both of us. And and then her sons read it, and they said, "Mom, get this book out there. Wow. It's good." And so those are some of my highlights.
I love that you said that, because you gave her agency. You gave her agency over the story that you were writing. You didn't shove it on anyone. You're like, this is what we're doing together. I want to make sure I honor that. And then you give her agency by her deciding whether or not she says yay or nay. That is both empowering. And I do believe, it changed. So look, we can't get rid of the past. It's happened. Mm-hmm. But as we sit here in the present moment, what I hear you saying is that we can change this future by starting to get a deeper understanding of, and then having conversations as to how do we want to move forward from here. And, mm-hmm. and I think a lot of that, it's something that I'm contemplating, and I wonder how you feel about this, is like, release the things. It's like the serenity prayer that you cannot change.
Yeah.
Because you were you with what you had, what you knew when you were a young girl. Mm-hmm. She was Mary with what she knew as a young girl. But as we all get some sort of, and I like to say enlightenment, but I think it's more of just like seeing humanity through the eyes of the whole, we're the collective whole rather than mm-hmm. the few, we start to see our own story in someone else. So going to...
Yes, and relationship. I would say that just building a relationship little by little, and building the trust and the truth you can tell each other. And forgiving each other. I mean, she did a lot of forgiving, like when I thought she was a workaholic.
Yeah.
I've asked her, she said, you just didn't know. You just didn't understand. So there's forgiveness involved also.
No, I'm glad you said that, because I think that unless you start from that place, like, how do you heal, right? I mean, how do you each person? And so I want to go back to your 3 takeaways, not your most favorite moments, but what are your 3 takeaways for those who are about to launch their book, write, or even start writing, or thinking about writing a book? What are 3 takeaways that you want to share from your own personal journey that can enlighten someone else?
Oh, that's such a great question. Can I have 4? Can I give 4?
You can give as many as you want.
So because I think free writing is so great. You just sit down and let the pen go.
Yeah.
And later you can go back and find a place that really has life for you, and then let the pen go again. So yeah. I think that that's one thing. Another thing is not giving up. I mean, I really did do it over 30 years. And I, as a Quaker with a spiritual faith, I felt like I was really meant to do this and to stick to it, even if it was difficult. So that helped me hang in there, stay in it. And also to keep learning how it can get better. It's like, I love the sense that a revision is a way of inhabiting the text more fully.
Yeah.
So you write what you can write, and then each time you revise it, there's more depth and more of you in there, and more of the meaning that you're searching for is in there. And the last thing I'd say is read a lot. Read a lot. I mostly read fiction, actually.
Really?
Yeah. It's hard to read nonfiction when fiction is just so fascinating. But I think that whatever you read, just read a lot.
I've heard fiction is more truthful than memoir, because fiction, people feel like they're behind this I guess a veil, so to speak. So they can be truly themselves.
Right.
We're like, whoa.
Yes. Well, and my friends who read the book on the way said, do you want to be this honest? Oh my God, I feel so protective of you. But I felt that's all I had was my honesty. So it's out there.
Well, if you weren't honest, the readers would know it. And I
Yeah.
think that I mean, we all know how special it is that that place of trust between the author and the reader to come at it fully with the intentions of sharing your story, but with also honoring the fact of their time from a place of truth or integrity, for certain.
Yes,
for sure.
Exactly. And that's how I felt about your book. I just felt the incredible honesty and vulnerability coming through. I loved it.
But back to your point with regard to you, since this is about you, thank you so much. I received that comment. But back to you, I think that one of the things that I want to come flying through is that you just said it. Mary's 80, you're 76. You wanted the story out there, and it's never too late to put it out there. And that's inspiring. And you have so many more stories in you. Plus, with regard to everything that, you know, you've done and that you continue to do, let me ask you, what's next for your future?
You know, thanks, Meg. I have a friend who just thinks I should write fiction now because turns out I'm a good scene maker. And so she wants me to write fiction, and she calls me about once a month to see how my fiction is going. And I said, Pam, I've worked on this book for 30 years, and I think it's a useful book for white readers. Also, I've had a black reader say, who's from Uganda, say this is exactly my experience in the 2020s. That Mary went through, and you know, she so I feel like it's a useful book, and I need to do everything I can to let people know about it. So I have full-time work, don't you?
Well,
I mean,
I do, and I want to say the what's next doesn't have to mean another book.
Exactly, it's letting people know
of the promotion. So, you know, that's important. The fact that you're going to Iowa and you're going to be speaking to these individuals, you know, bringing your, because listen to me when I tell you this, and it's completely honest. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, because if you meet the author and you don't like them, it's like it ruins the whole story for you. But if you meet the author and you love them, it takes that story to the next level. And I do believe that, and I will say this, you are the advocate for your book. You're their own personal representative. And it's a little person. I always say a little person walking around. So this beautiful book, these walls between us, has you and Mary to basically, you know, present it and to, you know, introduce it to people who might not otherwise have grabbed it and said, oh, I need to read this book. It's a beautiful cover and a beautiful story, but yet you are your greatest promoter. So yes, your what's next can be the continuation of this promotion, because yes, 30 years is a long time to be writing. I say match it with that to actually bring the story out there. And plus, it sounds to me that you and Mary have big dreams of TV. So I'm just going to put that out to the universe. You still have your cost or your outfit that you already picked, I'm sure.
It still fits, right?
That's even better, right? Even better.
So Meg, I wanted to say that Mary and I decided that a percentage of any money the book does make, most of it goes to Mary and to her family. But we've put aside a percentage to go to the Equal Justice Initiative, which is it's a group started by Brian Stevenson, a African-American man, a lawyer who's done his life work is to get people who've been wrongly incarcerated and wrongly put on death row free. Wow. And have you heard of the amazing lynching museum in Montgomery, Alabama? His group is the one that has an amazing museum about the history of African Americans, and then it's not a museum, the lynching, it's a memorial to all the African Americans who've been lynched in this country. And it's beautiful. If you can get to Montgomery, Alabama, go to it. It's the Equal Justice Initiative. And so she and I found that he was a hero to both of us. And so we've sent our first check to him.
That's amazing. And that's the whole paying it forward from your experience together, which I think is, okay. This is really how I see the world. We create our story, we edit often, but yet we're creating a beautiful legacy for our future and for whoever follows. So what you're doing not only impacts the two of you, but that beautiful healing, or what forgiveness, or everything, understanding, the whole conversation goes out, and there's a ripple effect beyond your wildest imagination now, especially giving back to the Equal Justice Initiative. And I applaud you, and I applaud Mary, and I applaud the work that you do. And I want to go back to this point. The what's next doesn't have to be writing another book. That's important, because I know you're just all like, it's kind of like asking someone that you're going to have another baby after you just had a baby. You're just like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? So I was like, yeah, really? And you're like, what? I gotta what? No. You go do you, and honor that authentic voice that comes through you as you bring your story to light and benefit many others who would not have benefited had it not been for you and Mary telling your story. So I applaud you. I applaud you and commend you. And I want to congratulate you, because it is the celebration of that hard work, that that effort, that became such a beautiful, what seemingly for the reader, it's not hard to read it. And I find that effortless, the kind of the beauty that, I love it, the revisions, but how difficult that is, but how it comes out on the page is like this synchronistic, beautiful, like symphony telling the story.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be preachy at all.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to flow as a story.
Yeah, and you're not a preachy person, and you definitely
I can be.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that side of you yet.
Good.
So, yeah. Good. But what I do love about you is that your willingness to learn, and I think that comes through in every different avenue of your life, certainly writing, but my God, how would you look back and tell yourself 30 years ago, where you sit now? Yeah. Like, what would you say to her?
I would say keep praying on this, because I think you're meant to do it. Just keep listening.
Yeah. I love that for everyone out there who is listening to us today. That is literally the following of the bray of your heart. Keep praying and listening, and with unadulterated faith, right? Moving forward into this beautiful life, because now you have a beautiful relationship with your wife and your partner. And
I do.
Your friend. But would you, like, starting out walking on that beach with Mary all those years ago, both of you, where you were, would you have ever imagined the life that you lead today?
No. And if Mary hadn't suggested it, we wouldn't be here.
There you go. We wouldn't be. I wouldn't have met you. That's for sure. So I know. Connections that come through. What are the hopes and dreams for your journey from this point on?
Well, as I said, we're going to visit. Polly and I are driving to Virginia to be with Mary for a few days in a couple of weeks, and so that's short term wonderful. Wow. And then I just hope that people read the book and like it, and start conversations based on it, with their families, with their loved ones, with their kids. I have friends who send it to their kids, that kind of thing. And, getting away from my own small lens, just that we would build a better world together.
Oh, that's awesome.
All of us.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, my friend. Yeah. Probably why we're in this room together, this amazing room where the story is waiting to happen. And I, with you, join in that beautiful, beautiful dream of all of us making a better world together.
Yes.
Each other for our gifts and our talents, and not label or stereotyping someone we don't know, and we don't have a chance to give them the opportunity to share their story. So I love that. Yeah. So when we think about you, what do you want us to think about, Wendy? Like, some people say, oh, never give up, or, I am the true survivor. What is it that what would you want us to associate with you?
Well, that if you feel there are barriers between you and other people, it's a good idea to look at what you need to learn.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. So
Yeah.
that is a wonderful, wonderful takeaway for all of us from this amazing author, Wendy Sanford. Where can we find your beautiful book?
Thank you. You asked the best questions. So it's for sale in bookstores everywhere. You can order it at your local library, which is so great because then other people might see it too. Um, and uh, and if you have a book club or an anti-racism book club that wants to get it and wants to have me and Mary come talk, that's another way to delve into it. I actually finally worked on some reflection questions.
Oh, I like that.
That I send out with the book also. So
I want to ask you one final question. It's totally selfish, and that's perfectly fine because I say it's self-full. How does your experience at the Harvard Divinity School play out for the rest of your life? How had that experience impacted everything that you did from the time you graduated till now?
Well, one of the classes I took there, actually a little after I graduated, I went back and took a course from a woman named Reverend Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon. And there's a chapter about her in my book, actually. And she's African-American, was the first African-American woman to be ordained in the Presbyterian Church. And sadly, she died last year. But she taught this class in which we read novels by African-American women. And the class was on ethics. So it was about the moral agency of someone who grows up with so many obstacles and makes choices within a condition of oppression. And that's how you understand what morality is and what ethics are. And so that got me going, reading all these books and preparing to be a better friend to Mary. And I didn't end up I was a campus minister for 10 years. But as a Quaker, I don't seek ordination. I'm the part of Quakers that are just, we just think everyone has God in them and that God comes through us if we're open to it. So we don't have ministers, my particular branch. So it didn't become a life work in that way, but it was, I used to say it was like going to church. The classes were good, but the best part was lunch. Because you talked and talked and talked about things that really mattered to you.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Sometimes having conversations like this are like going to church. I have a feel like, you have that, because for me, church is community and how we are open to each other in the community of love and faith and acceptance and forgiveness and walking that path toward a better future. So with that, I absolutely love this conversation.
Yes, it's so great.
Anything else you want to leave us with today?
I don't think so. This has been so full, so complete. A lot of gratitude. Thank you for your generosity in talking with me. And I love being in our cohort with you. It's a really wonderful group of women who have all published just really, really fine books.
Well, I want to say
yes.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I was going to talk about the Camino because I wouldn't have made the first half a day, and I was with you every second. You wrote about it so powerfully.
That's my shout out to my Denise Ling. I don't wouldn't have made it without her and Rita Sarmiento. I wouldn't have made it to the end. I said we all walk each other together on that beach, on that Camino, wherever we find ourselves. We're all walking with each other to hopefully make a difference in this world and our own lives by healing whatever wounds we have, whatever barriers, to your point, that we have within ourselves, by starting those conversations, which I think goes back to your book and what you're trying to bring out, is that how the beauty of the conversation, so that we all realize this is a collective. We're all part of the same. And
we are, Meg.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, and I have to tell you, you're probably the first Quaker I've ever met. So, even in that, I don't know a lot about it, but I've learned so much from your story as well, and the beautiful way you told it. So I want to thank you for actually trusting me with helping you tell your story as to how you became an amazing author. And I encourage everyone to go grab her book, These Walls Between Us, and then absolutely review it, because, you know, we as authors, especially indies, love the support, want to keep the message going. And like she said, reach out to Wendy to, in fact, bring her and Mary, you got a double team here, to your book clubs, etc., so that the conversation and the healing can continue. So with that,
well,
thank you.
let me just say, if
Oh.
I didn't say how people could reach me. So I do have a website, and you can find out more about Mary's work in corrections. Also, she was a very humane person in what was becoming a very inhumane, well, it was always pretty inhumane. It was becoming worse and worse system. But so I have a website, and it's Wendy Sanford thesewallsbetweenus.com.
That's
So
awesome.
that's how to reach me. And thank you, Meg, so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Amazing Authors, where the story is waiting to happen. Certainly, this has been a wonderful episode. Remember, great writing stirs our emotions. Books do, in fact, change lives, makes us feel, and those authors who are vulnerable to the extent truly are changing the world. So keep making a difference with your words and get us all to think even more. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
You too, Meg. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.